Greetings, friends. I've been meaning to comment on the immigration policy in Canada under the Liberal Party, with Mark Carney now established as the Prime Minister, but now Keir Starmer, leader of the Labour Party and Prime Minister of Great Britain, has made this groundbreaking speech about immigration, and I want to comment and respond to the speech in this video. But I do want to highlight that under the Liberals, even with Justin Trudeau before he left the scene, maybe about half a year ago or so, the government began making changes to its immigration and the actual numbers, especially with regards to foreign students. And this isn't just talk, like we've actually seen real changes in Canada with regards to immigration reductions, and specifically regarding foreign students who comprise so many of the international arrivals. Here, this story by the Waterloo Region Record talks about Conestoga College, which I believe is located in Kitchener, Ontario, has moved to a 4-day week as its international recruitment drops by 95%. 95%. They talk about how big a portion of the school the international students are. They don't mention anything about why these changes in immigration are happening, but of course it's because of policies instituted under the Liberal government. So you can't fall into thinking that only the supposed right-wing side or the supposed conservative side is going to do the things that need to be done. And as much as these people, these globalists, are our enemies, we have to recognize when they do things which are moving things in the right direction. That doesn't mean I'm going to vote for the Liberal Party or support the Liberal Party. They're hypocrites. They've invited mass immigration. They've celebrated all of that. But we see and we can recognize that changes are afoot. Changes are afoot in the wider Western world, if you may call it that, at least with regards to Canada and Great Britain. Someone told me that Trump was succeeding in shutting down the southern border and getting more deportations. I'd still like to see more confirmation of that, but according to government statistics, they actually were succeeding in that regard. So if that's true, I'll give credit to Trump where credit is due. The rest of his presidency seems pretty much like a clown show, but if he's succeeding in that, then all the power to him. But it does signal that other countries are doing the same thing, even under supposedly left-wing governments. But before I get to Keir Starmer's speech, just one more point about the actual nature of Canada's immigration reform. On their Federal Government of Canada's website, in the section under immigration and how are immigrants selected, they talk about their immigration targets. They say that Canada aims to welcome 395,000 permanent residents in 2025, 380,000 in 2026, so a slight reduction of only 15,000, but a reduction nonetheless, and then 365,000 in 2027, so more of a reduction, not a huge reduction, but it does signal a change in the wind. I've also read that study permits issued to Indian students specifically dropped by 32% over the past year. I mean, it's just kind of funny if the Liberals would end up being the ones to do this, to actually put Canada back on the right track, at least make the first step in that direction rather than a supposedly right-wing party. That would be really funny. It could happen. They have the tools of power. They have the infrastructure laid down from so many generations that they can get the ball rolling. They can wield power. So let's just hope that they wield power in a way that helps us, the little peasants. So that's enough of the Canadian situation. Now I want to get to Great Britain and this speech by Keir Starmer, which I want to play and intersperse with my comments. So this speech was given about a day ago, maybe 2 days now. Well, as I'm making this video, it's Tuesday, May 13th, 2025.
Good morning. Today we publish a white paper on immigration, a strategy absolutely central to my plan for change that will finally take back control of our borders and close the book on a squalid chapter for our politics, our economy, and our country. Take back control. Everyone knows that slogan, and everyone knows what it meant on immigration, or at least that's what people thought. Because what followed from the previous government, starting with the people who used that slogan, was the complete opposite. Between 2019 and 2023, even as they were going round our country, telling people with a straight face that they would get immigration down, net migration quadrupled until in 2023 it reached nearly 1 million. That's about the population of Birmingham, our second largest city. That's not control, it's chaos. And look, they must answer for themselves. But I don't think that you can do something like that by accident. It was a choice made even as they told the country, they were doing the opposite. A one-nation experiment in open borders, conducted on a country that voted for control. Well, no more.
So what Keir Starmer is referring to here is that the British public voted for Brexit to leave the European Union and specifically to get immigration under control, and they were given the opposite. The numbers of foreign arrivals quadrupled, as Keir Starmer goes on to say. So he's wisely calling out the previous government, even though his own party would be complicit in the same thing. But it is true that the so-called right, the capitalist or free market right, in the end ended up being the real proponents of mass immigration for economic reasons. It wasn't really Marxism, as bad as Marxism is. That's just a cope. It was big business bringing them in. And the context for this speech is Labour realizing how they just got trounced in the council elections, if I'm using the correct designation there. I don't know much about British politics, but I follow Academic Agent, and he talks about all the goings-on in UK politics. And of course, they got this disastrous result for Labour, and Keir Starmer was already very unpopular. He suffered heavily in his reputation for what happened during the Southport riots, which were a reaction to some children being murdered by a foreigner. Even though they were born in the country, they were of a foreign culture and had a hatred towards white girls, and murdered some of them at a school, and provoking these riots, which had obviously an ethnic or racial dynamic to them. Starmer, in that time, which is less than a year ago, sternly came down against the rioters, against the real right, the ethnic British. He came down against them. But here he is, less than a year later, and things have changed. Well, his messaging has changed for sure.
Today, this Labour government is shutting down the lab. The experiment is over. We will deliver what you've asked for time and again, and we will take back control of our borders. And let me tell you why. Because I know, on a day like today, people who like politics will try to make this all about politics. About this or that strategy, targeting these voters, responding to that party. No. I'm doing this because it is right, because it is fair, and because it is what I believe Today, this Labour government is shutting down the lab. The experiment is over. We will deliver what you've asked for time and again, and we will take back control of our borders. And let me tell you why. Because I know, on a day like today, people who like politics will try to make this all about politics, about this or that strategy, targeting these voters, responding to that party. No. I'm doing this because it is right, because it is fair, and because it is what I believe in.
Because it's on the side of the native Britons, who still remain a majority, if soon to be swamped.
Let me put it this way. Nations depend on rules, fair rules. Sometimes they're written down, often they're not. But either way, they give shape to our values, guide us towards our rights, of course, but also our responsibilities, the obligations we owe to each other. Now, in a diverse nation like ours, and I celebrate that, these rules become even more important. Without them, we risk becoming an island of strangers, not a nation that walks forward together.
Without these rules, without these common socially accepted behaviors and understandings, we risk becoming an island of strangers. This is the expression that the left became infuriated with. And they're comparing Keir Starmer's speech to the Rivers of Blood speech by Enoch Powell, however many decades ago. Keir Starmer is not Enoch Powell at all. However, in some sense, he's forced to agree with some of Enoch Powell's points by giving the speech.
So when you have an immigration system that seems almost designed to permit abuse, that encourages some businesses to bring in lower paid workers rather than invest in our young people, or simply one that is sold by politicians to the British people on an entirely false premise, then you're not championing growth, you're not championing justice, or however else people defend the status quo. You're actually contributing to the forces that are slowly pulling our country apart.
Well, it's true. A lot of the things he's saying here are straight up correct. You have to call it for what it is. He's speaking truth in many regards here. He's still saying things like, I still like diversity, and he's being careful to avoid ethnic or racial language and keep it abstract like rules. I mean, he's being smart in that regard, but he's not speaking incorrectly. The society suffers and falls apart under multiculturalism and mass immigration itself.
So yes, I believe in this. I believe we need to reduce immigration significantly.
Wow. I mean, that's just laying it out there. And you notice he's saying immigration, meaning legal immigration. This is no longer a discussion about, just illegals, just people coming and loaded in 18-wheelers or coming on boats across the English Channel. No, this is legal immigration. This is what's in question now.
That's why some of the policies in this white paper go back nearly 3 years. Why I told the Labour Party conference, taking back control is a Labour argument. And why, most importantly of all, inward migration is already falling with this government. It's about fairness. And look, migration is part of Britain's national story. We talked last week about the great rebuilding of this country after the war. Migrants were part of that, and they make a massive contribution today. And you will never hear me denigrate that.
I mean, he has to pay his lip service, of course. I mean, we don't have to accept everything he's saying here.
But when people come to our country, they should also commit to integration. to learning our language. And our system should actively distinguish between those that do and those that don't.
Where's the language of inclusivity? We have to include everyone. No, this is like our system will accommodate those who do follow the rules and distinguish against those who will not follow the rules. That's not a bad direction to move in.
I think that's fair. Equally, Britain must compete for the best talent in the world, in science, in technology, in healthcare. You can't simply pull up a drawbridge, let nobody in, and think that's an economy that would work. That would hurt the pay packets of working people without question.
No. Working people would be all right. It's the people higher up and basically the CEOs of the companies who wouldn't have the cheap labor anymore. They'd take a bit of a hit. Maybe people who have a lot of stocks would take a hit. No, the working people, their wages would rise. When a lot of the working age males disappear, what are you going to pay the remaining ones less? No, they'll leave you and they'll find someone else to work for who pays them more. Because now they have the leverage.
But at the same time, we do have to ask why parts of our economy seem almost addicted to importing cheap labour, rather than investing in the skills of people who are here and want a good job in their community. Sectors like engineering, where visas have rocketed while apprenticeships have plummeted. Is that fair to Britain? Is that fair to young people, weighing up their future to miss out on those apprentices? To see colleges in their community almost entirely dedicated to one-year courses for overseas students?
Yeah, I don't have any love for such, I don't want to even call them institutions, such growths. I don't have any love for such growths.
No, I don't think that it is. And truth be told, I don't think anybody does. Yet that is the Britain this broken system has created. So as this white paper sets out, every area of the immigration system, work, family and study, will be tightened up so we have more control. Skill requirements raised to degree level. English language requirements across all routes, including for dependents. The time it takes to acquire settled status extended from 5 years to 10.
He said the time it takes to acquire settled status extended from 5 years to 10 years. That's a big change.
And enforcement tougher than ever, because fair rules must be followed. Now, make no mistake, this plan means migration will fall. That's a promise. But I want to be very clear on this. If we do need to take further steps, if we do need to do more to release pressure on housing and our public services, then mark my words, we will. But it's not just about numbers, because the chaos of the previous government also changed the nature of immigration in this country. Fewer people who make a strong economic contribution, more who work in parts of our economy that put downward pressure on wages.
Yeah, he's just speaking to the Indians and all the other people from the third world who do gigs, Uber drivers, delivery drivers. I mean, you got to blame the native white Canadians and I don't know, in Britain if they have that too, but because we enable a lot of this stuff of slobs who order like on online delivery. You slobs, like stop empowering this stuff. But the point is, the immigrants are filling less and less the sort of role that generates a high income and requires a higher skill and more low-end jobs, which are going to lower wages for everyone. And that's not to mention them clearing you out through nepotism, through group favoritism, like every people in the world is tribal. Did you ever think that they'll exercise their group politics in your own country? When they get here, they will.
So perhaps the biggest shift in this white paper is that we will finally honour what take back control meant and begin to choose who comes here so that migration works for our national interest.
That's what it's about. It shouldn't be ideological, or if it is ideological, the idea is not too complicated. It's just serving the people. Does migration serve the people? Who are the people? The British people. Who are the British people? They know who they are. We all know who they are. We don't need to ask that question anymore. We know. So, are you going to serve them or not? If you are, then you can use capitalism. You can use some socialism. You can use migration perhaps to a little extent, but no more mass immigration. That's done. I mean, maybe you can have a little immigration in 20 years. You need to end mass immigration down to zero, and then you need to go into the negative numbers of sending people home. Sending the right people home, at least, let's say that. Now, obviously, the Labour government's not going to do that. The Liberal Party's not going to do that in Canada. But the wind is changing.
You know, this is where the whole debate is skewed. As if some people think controlling immigration is reining in a sort of natural freedom, rather than the basic and reasonable responsibility of government to make choices that work for a nation's economy. And for years, this seems to have muddled our thinking. But let me be clear, it ends now. We will create a migration system that is controlled, selective, and fair. A clean break with the past that links access to visas directly to investment in homegrown skills. So that if a business wants to bring people in from abroad, they must first invest in Britain. But also, so settlement becomes a privilege that is earned, not a right. Easier if you make a contribution, if you work, pay in, and help rebuild our country. Now, some people may even be against that. But I think for the vast majority of people in this country, that is what they have long wanted to see. An immigration system that is fair, that works for our national interest, and that restores common sense and control to our borders. That is what this white paper will deliver. Lower net migration, higher skills, backing British workers. The start of repairing our social contract, which the chaos and cynicism of the last government did so much to undermine. Thank you.
Very interesting speech. Again, it remains to be seen how much they're actually going to do. But it is significant that the messaging has changed. Obviously, they're getting the same messaging that Mark Carney is. And it's a vindication for those of us on the right who have been criticizing mass immigration. I've certainly been criticizing it since 2017, which is basically when this channel started. That's one thing that I've been consistent about, I think, for the entire duration of this channel. I've always criticized mass immigration. I wouldn't be a unique person to do it, but that's definitely been one of the themes of this channel. And does that mean that leftists are now going to have to get their updates? Are they going to think it's okay to say that we've got too many Indians here? I don't know. I don't think leftists are going to change, but maybe they'll get some updates. Hasta luego, amigos.